Great to have you here. Great. So, welcome to Full Spectrum Meditation. And it's really great to have you at this session. This is a session that summarizes the previous 4 sessions. There are 3 dimensions that I talked about for this full meditation practice. The first was awareness practice, just paying attention to consciousness and awareness itself. The second was prayer, or praying to, or visualizing, or receiving a blessing from an archetypal form. And the third was cognitive psychological meditation, not cognitive at all, psychological meditation, psychological healing. And those are 3 different forms of meditation practice. And it's great to be able to do all of them in a single session. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do these 3 forms of meditation together. And it's really important to me, this topic, because some people teach spiritual meditation, other people teach psychological meditation. But actually, in a single sitting, we can do all 3 forms of meditation. And next week, we'll do it in a very short amount of time. We'll do the meditation practice in a very short amount of time. So just to say a little bit more about those 3 forms of meditation before we do the meditation itself, just briefly. So everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel is of interest. But we're so absorbed in what we see, what we hear, and what we feel that we never notice consciousness itself, or we seldom notice consciousness itself. So the metaphor that's often used is that of a mirror. You have all the reflections in the mirror and you pay attention to those reflections. But actually looking at the mirror itself, looking at what it is that reflects, is also really interesting. And so consciousness is like a mirror. It stays the same all the time. It never changes. It's the only thing in you that never changes. But all the reflections of life, all the inputs that come into consciousness are changing all the time. So another metaphor that's used is that consciousness is like the sky, but we have many different weather systems going through the sky. So what we're exploring with awareness practice is the nature of consciousness itself. And it's interesting to note, I've been reading up on awareness practice within the Buddhist tradition in academic sources. And something that was really important for me was that mindfulness, the way that it's taught in the West, is not generally a reverential system, a system that's about discovering your true nature. Most of the time, mindfulness is taught as a way of relaxing or de-stressing, or getting some sort of health benefit. But spiritual mindfulness is about discovering source, or Buddha nature, or God, or whatever you choose to call it, whatever it is that you call it. What is the essence that is our nature? And so paying attention to awareness is the deepest form of practice in a way. And that the first step is that we observe, first we observe what's arising in consciousness. We observe what we see, what we hear, what we feel. And then we start to step back a little bit from that and say, who is it, or what is it that is seeing, hearing, and feeling? What is the mirror? Where does all of this information arrive? And sometimes I use the metaphor of, can I try and feel the brain cells where this information from the world is being processed? And so that's really the first step. So the first step is, paying attention to things that are here in the moment with eyes, sound, and feeling. And really the second step is watching awareness itself, noticing awareness itself. And with internal dialogue, it's particularly interesting with internal dialogue, because one of the questions you can ask yourself is, where does that thought come from? So you try to catch the thought before it's become a full-fledged dream. And it doesn't matter that the thought arises, because thoughts are part of being human anyway. But for this practice, what matters is that you don't follow the thought, that you don't climb on the back of the thought and float off for the next 20 minutes, dreaming about whatever it happens to be that interests you at this time. The step that's beyond this is that after a lot of observing consciousness, once you've got a really good habit there and the mind is quite quiet, then there can be moments of when the observer disappears. So very early in our practice, when we're beginners, the observer disappears and we follow a thought and we think about, some heroic adventure that we'd like to do, or, some beautiful man or woman, or some great job promotion, or we think about whatever it happens to be. So early in the practice, when the observer disappears, then you lose presence, you stop being present. But once you've really habituated to practice and you're really good at staying present and the observer is really great at keeping you on track, then there can be moments of when you just relax a little bit and then everything is one. And then very quickly a little voice will come in and say, oh, this is the non-dual. And as soon as you say this is the non-dual, it's not, because that's a dualistic voice naming it as the non-dual. And that's why you can't teach the secrets of meditation it's not a thing that you can do with your ego, because the ego wants to label it. Once you label it, it's no longer everything is one. So you can see the footprints after the experience of everything is one. You can say, oh, I think I was in oneness. But thinking you were in oneness is not the same as being in oneness. But over a period of time, you begin to know that you have confidence in that state of oneness. But that's quite far down the mystical path. And what's great about mindfulness is that it does help you relax. It does have health benefits. It does improve all sorts of parts of our lives. But it's only the beginning in terms of a spiritual practice. And then later on, all of these other things will unfold. So the second form of spiritual practice is when you're intentionally dual. There is you and there is God. There is you and there is Buddha. There is you and there is Gandalf. There is you and there's an archetypal form. The joke I make in Russia is your archetypal form in China could be, it could be Buddha, it could be Lao Tzu, it could be Mao Zedong. You choose your archetypal form. It could be an image of a painting by Blake, or your childhood imagining of what source or higher power looked like. It could be anything that you want. It could be the goddess. It could be Mother Nature. It could be one of the many female archetypal forms that we see in Eastern religions. So, but someone to pray to. So the idea is that someone to talk to and someone to receive blessings from. So the Tibetan Buddhists say that actually awareness itself is the Buddha, and that I project into the sky an archetypal form. Or you could say that God is everywhere, including here. And then from this creative potential that I have, I project an image into the sky, and then I pray to the image in the sky, and then I bring it back in again at the end of the meditation. So it's an artifice, but it's a useful one. But in fact, it's incredibly powerful. Throughout the day, and very often at night, if I wait for a few moments at night, I pray to archetypal forms. It's really, it's a lovely thing to do, to feel the blessing, to feel the connection of that archetypal form. And of course, you can pray for healing for yourself and for other people. There is lots of many different creative ways of praying to archetypal forms. I think last week I mentioned having a rain of the life energy of the universe coming down into my body to give myself health and long life. You could do that with health practices, or you could imagine, someone's died. It's a beautiful practice to imagine their body full of light, or a higher power filling their body full of light. Or even, when you're you can first you imagine the higher power, the archetypal form, the goddess or the god or the saint. Then you can imagine yourself as that saint, and then you could have the energy going from your heart to whoever it is that needs healing. There's just a myriad of different ways of doing this, as sort of infinite possibility. And if you're connected with a tradition, there may be a method in your tradition that works really well for you. So do what's right for you. Basically, your essence is source. You've never been separate from source for a minute. Every breath, you're connected to the whole of life. You couldn't exist if source hadn't come out of emptiness, something hadn't come out of the empty universe. The first question in philosophy is, why is there anything? Before something, there was nothing. So whatever it is that went from nothing to something, that's what I can call source, if you like. So what was the point that I was making? It was that so I'm just tuning in. So at any point, any time, one can tune in. So even though we are source, it can be really great to imagine it as separate from us and have a relationship with us. Oh, the point that I wanted to make was that since your fundamental nature is source, you can take advice from people on how to practice, how to pray, what to believe, but there is no higher authority than the authority that is invested in you as in your aliveness. And there are lots of traditions, some of which are sort of, powerful brands that they want to claim the authority and tell you that they know better than you. And I don't support that. It's much, you can get advice. There are people with wisdom who we can get advice from, but really my own fundamental nature is source. So that's all I need to pray to. But of course, advice is useful, but don't let anyone, particularly old men with white beards, tell you what to think. So really tune in, do your own tuning in to life and the universe. And, go and look at starry nights, spend time alone in nature, spend time in the ocean, engage in activities that take you into places that are bigger than yourself. And get advice from people who seem wise and kind and warm-hearted and non-judgmental. So then the third form of practice is psychological practice. And the difference between the psychological and the spiritual practice is that the spiritual practice is connecting you to something bigger than your own individual life, whereas the psychological practice, the main focus is on having a healthy ego that can deal well with situations, high performance situations where you can do really well, and also difficulty and woundedness and the vulnerable places in your life. That's the difference between the psychological meditations and the spiritual meditations. And last week we talked about, all the psychological resources that we can bring to bear. It could be the archetypal forms, to help us feel strong. It could be everyone who's ever loved us, every teacher who's looked us in the eye and said yes, every person who's believed in us. All of those are available to you because you have consciousness. It could be Mother Nature. It could be this tree. It could be an ocean. It could be, you could invoke or invite characters from childhood books, heroic figures from Greek myths, people from, I was joking this morning because I got confused, but there's a movie out called the Black Panther, I think it's called, and I confused it with the Pink Panther, and those are quite different sorts of things. So, whoever you want, if you need a humorous character from the Pink Panther, if you need Peter Sellers, he's there. If you've seen a Peter Sellers movie, you can invoke Peter Sellers. If you need some powerful archetypal form, he's there or she's there. But the purpose of the psychological meditation is to deal with your own, yourself, the you that has emotions, and support you, either bringing the best of yourself to bear in a high performance situation, or holding some vulnerable place in yourself because it's been touched by the world. Any questions before we do the meditation? Before we go into the meditation? Looks like we can do the meditation and then we can have questions. So I always feel that the most important part of the meditation happens before I'm fully conscious of it. So I'm just inviting you to just tune into yourself before I even start. Can you notice the stillness? Is there a place in you that has stillness? And making yourself comfortable. Various people are moving around the screen, making themselves comfortable. And my heart feels very warm seeing you. So we're going to start with awareness practice, which is just to pay attention to your senses. I'm not going to take you through the ritual of seeing 4 things, hearing 4 things, feeling 4 things, 3 things, 2 things, 1 thing that many of you have been through with me before. But I want you to pay attention, or I suggest that you pay attention to what it is that you see, what it is that you hear, and what it is that you feel. And of course, that's on the outside and also on the inside. You could actually say that skin feels the outside and muscle feels on the inside, and emotions feel on the inside. But there's what you see in the world around you, if your eyes are open, and there's what you see in your mind's eye, if your eyes are closed. Of course, if your eyes are closed, there's the darkness of your eyelids as well. And also, I suspect I should really do a little, survey on this, that there is dots of light on your eyelids. They're dark, there's dots of light. I certainly can see the pink, probably of blood vessels in my eyelids as well. Just a sort of pink sheen. So notice that you are seeing things optically, even when your eyes are closed. But also, of course, there's the images in your mind's eye. For most people have images in their mind's eye, not everybody. Isn't it interesting to know that some people see a lot in their mind's eye, some people hear a lot, some people feel a lot. Many people have one that they're very strong with and one that they're less strong with. So pay attention What is, of your senses, which is the one that is strongest for you? And which is the one that's least strong? So perhaps it would be interesting to pay more attention to the one that's least strong. And one of the things that takes us deeper is to gather to notice several things within that sense. So you feel for things, hear for things, or see for things. And because your inner voice can be addictive, we're all addicted to it. Our society has trained us that way. The age of reason. Notice any inner voice you have and listen from a distance. It's a voice in your head. You can also hear my voice. You can also hear perhaps silence or noise in your room or household noise or traffic outside the window. So, given that you can hear a lot more than just this voice, you are a lot more than just this voice. So just observe it with kindness and compassion from a distance. And one way to make sure that you're not just too hooked into your internal dialogue is just to pay a lot of attention to other things. So, for example, just feeling up through your body, feeling the different sensations on your skin, or feeling the muscles in your body. There's 1 billion miles between the crown of your head and your feet. There are millions of nerve endings between the crown of your head and your feet. How many of those can you feel? Just exploring the galaxy between the crown of your head and your feet. And it can be great to pay attention to breathing. Because breathing engages the trunk of the body and our feeling senses. And so I like to pay attention to the minute detail of an in-breath, the hairs in my nose, the feeling of the air going down my throat, the way that my chest expands, the way that It pushes down into your belly. And so start to pay attention first to the way that attention itself moves around. 1 minute attention is paying attention to a muscle, the next to a thought, the next to something you hear. Attention darts around. Can you notice behind attention the field of awareness? Where does everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel arrive in your brain? Behind what you see, what you hear, what you feel. Where does that arrive? Just paying attention to that. You won't be able to grab it. It's like spacious. Some people even say luminous. It's more subtle. It's subtle. I'm beginning to pay attention to awareness itself. The one who senses. Some people ask, who is this that is sensing? But really it's not who, it's what. What is this process of awareness? That all the ever-changing experiences flow through. And perhaps there's some form of archetypal form that you'd like to have with you right now, that you'd like to have visit you right now, that you'd like to have a rendezvous with. And perhaps it's a form that you've imagined before, or perhaps it's a fresh form that you haven't seen before. Just allow it to emerge. And just notice how much you can see, how much you can hear. And also check the distance. Is it far away or is it really close? What seems like an appropriate distance? And you could say, make a request. Please help me. Or please support me in this aspect of my life. Or nice to meet you. I'd like to know you better would be a good one. Quite often just to say something nice when you meet someone. I've heard a lot about you. Ancient of days. You know. Chat away. You don't have to be polite. I mean, you can be polite, but you don't have to use any fancy form. You can be intimate. You can say, hello, Dad, or hello, Mum. Hello, older brother. Hello, older sister. Hello, great one. And see how they respond. Do they speak? And sometimes it's really beautiful to imagine light coming from them into your body that fills your body, healing energy. But just as important, it can be to feel them with your belly, the way that you would feel a friend or a child. To sense them viscerally. And to say to them, teach me. Let me be your disciple. Let me learn from you. Like a child learns from a parent, let me learn from you so I become like you. Neuroscience says that if you spend a lot of time around someone, you become more like them. What about spending a lot of time around this archetypal form? And perhaps you want to make a commitment to talk to them every day, to build a relationship with them every day. With my archetypal forms that I talk to, I want to visit with them several times a day. I want to be under their guidance as much as possible. And now, let's bring these archetypal forms and let's invite any mentors we have, people we know who believe in us and see us and support us, love us, whether they're currently in our lives, whether they've passed over to the other side but are still present with us, whether they're from our childhood, someone in our childhood, or someone who helped us with our career. Invite them to join your circle of supporters with the archetypal forms. I love to have a circle around me. It could be 6. You can develop this over time, there's no hurry. Sometimes I have a circle around me and then a circle around them. Perhaps even a circle around them. But just right now, just have, in addition to the archetypal forms, 1 or 2 people who believe in you and care about you. See them, perhaps they have some words. And feel them. That's perhaps the most important thing. Feel their support. And so then with the support of this circle of supporters, check out your heart. How is your heart today? How's your emotional heart today? How's your belly today? Bring their care and their love to your heart. And then with your warm heart, bring your warm heart to your belly, to the tender parts of your body. And ask yourself, how am I today? Or how is this part of me today? So really there's the you that has the connection with the circle of supporters and archetypal forms. But there may also be parts of you that hurt or need something, want something. You can say, what's my woundedness today? What's my vulnerability today? And bring the love and support of those circle of supporters to them. Hold that place in yourself with love and compassion. Welcome them. We're taught to push feelings away, but the fastest way to change a feeling is to say, welcome, you're so welcome. Let me know you. Let that place in yourself be seen by your circle of supporters and by your heart. And hold them in love. Basically, hold that place in yourself with love, with the support of your archetypal forms and your supporters. And sometimes there may need to be a conversation in this direction, conversation down with your belly, with perhaps this feeling is like a child in you. Sometimes it's, the kid in you who's 5, or the vulnerable girl who's 12, or the boy who's 18, or the baby. Sometimes it's even the feeling from the womb. Sometimes one just needs to say, yes, yes, I feel you, I see you, I hear you, I accept you. I want to pay attention to you. Just paying attention to the neglected places in ourselves changes them. We don't have to do anything else. When we welcome a neglected place in ourselves, the relationship has changed. But perhaps for some of you, I'd love you to feel them, your supporters, sending love to your heart, really seeing you and sending love to your heart. The more your heart is filled with love and support, the better you can support any painful places in yourself. To let the whole of you be filled with love, being welcomed, even the pain being welcomed. We're not trying to change the pain, we're just welcoming it. What does any vulnerable place in you need today? What does it long for today? What does it long for right now? And what might you do? What commitment might you make to support that longing in you today? Or what might you do today that would support you? How might you treat yourself? Who might you call? Who do you want to connect with? And then just having a feeling of this, how do I care for this vulnerable place in me today? What do I need today? And then, of course, it's possible to go back and forth between the different practices. To go back to noticing awareness itself, noticing the whole field that holds any difficulty that you have. Going to the spiritual practice of praying to, receiving support from archetypal forms. Maybe that's what you most need today. Or perhaps remembering those people who care about you and believe in you, see the best in you, and feeling their support. And bringing that support to any place in your body, your belly, your womb, your chest, your pelvis that needs that. Bringing your warm, tender heart to yourself. And so when you're ready, gradually just stay deeply connected, but orientate back to the screen. And we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 21 minutes. What I want you to be really careful about is really paying attention, really bringing your presence and your heart to the speaker. So one person speaks and all the others do is say, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And open questions, no closed questions, no advice, no how about, nothing of that at all. If you hear anybody giving advice or asking closed questions, please stop them. The third person in the group, stop the person if they're giving advice. And just being there with your open heart and listening to whatever it is that the person is saying. And so in the groups of 3, that will be 7 minutes per person. And in the groups of 4, it'll be 5 minutes per person. I will do the timing for the groups of 4. So if you're in a group of 3, you need to do your timing. So in the group of 3, if you do your timing, and the groups are going to open. Great, welcome back. Great to have you here. How was the exercise for you? Who wants to share? How was the meditation? And you can tell me if it didn't work for you, because of course, my meditations won't work for everybody, but how did the meditation work for you? Of course, Maggie smiles when I say that, because my meditations don't always work very well for her. But she comes anyway, so that's a good sign. So what did you get from the process? Are you able to apply this to your own meditation practice?
I mean, I really like it and I get loads out of it normally, but unfortunately I fell asleep. So I think I got about 30 seconds of it, it feels.
Don't worry about falling asleep. From a meditation, from a hypnosis point of view, falling asleep is good. It just means you need some sleep. And actually, it's really one of my favorite ways of meditating is when I'm half asleep and half awake. So I've got just enough attention to keep whatever the meditation is that I'm doing, but it's like in a dreamlike state. And also I do that at night. Sometimes if I can't sleep at night, I do that. And then I fall into the sleep state and then I come back out again and I'm just in between the two. So it's a good, healthy sign. If you fall asleep, it means it's working. It probably means you need some sleep. And also, I think sometimes we need to process things at a deeper unconscious level as well. So don't worry about that, Katie. That's a good sign. And of course, you can listen to the audio afterwards if you want to. It'll get posted on Saturday. Thank you. Anything else from that exercise?
Well, Caroline.
Go on, Caroline. Caroline, and then who? Who was the other person?
Paul.
Paul, great. Caroline, and then Paul. Yeah.
I found it really, really interesting. I'm not quite sure how to talk about it, but that kind of experience of, being in the field of consciousness is one layer. The thing that really I found two things I found really particular for me was this really sort of, again, I can't really put words to it, but this feeling that sort of I am the prayer.
Mm.
And then when it came to the psychological bit, it was like, I am the giver and receiver of love. And at the same time, I am that love given and received. And it was like, again, I can't articulate it, but there's something that is certainly, you asked the question, is there something that you can take into your meditation or into, I don't know so much about that, but certainly into life, that feeling of actually that kind of I am feeling was very strong. And I found that really helpful. So thank you. And I think that's partly something to do as well with the way you fuse the three sort of aspects. So yeah.
Thank you. Beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Thank you. Cool.
Yes, I found the three-dimensional meditation held my attention and stimulated my response. And it really was enriching for me as a practice in a way that just focusing on the archetypal or the psychological alone seems rather barren. And this triple engagement met me where I am and enabled, I hope, me to accept and affirm even the discomfort around where I am presently, and where perforce this Christmas even more so I'm going to have to be along with many others. And so I shall return to this particular meditation after Saturday, possibly for several days, as a discipline, maybe a coping discipline, but also one which is about self-maintenance in the face of these things. So thank you.
Sure.
And thank you for the other three in my group who enriched it so much.
That's such a beautiful sharing, Paul. Thank you. Just to mention, of course, that we sort of structure it. We start with awareness practice, then we go to the relational practice, and then we do the psychological practice. But of course, that's just a linear sequence, isn't it? Very often I will do it that way. But if I'm sitting down to do awareness practice and I've got an aching emotional feeling in my belly, I'll go pretty quickly to the psychological practice, and I might just invoke the higher powers, invoke spiritual powers, invoke my circle of people who love me and believe me, bring them to my warm heart, and then go in and check out what's happening in my belly. So, and then having done that for a while and having pacified the baby in me or the child in me or given love and attention to that aspect of myself, then maybe later in the meditation I'll say, oh, now I'm ready to go out to the broader space. So in a sense, it's not really a sequence, it's three elements of the practice. And that, that you may do them in sort of three flavors in the dish that you're cooking today might be the way to do it. I mean, of course, paying attention to what's arising in the moment is the guide. I'm paying attention to that, but whether you are then calling on resources or doing healing work or doing psychological work, or whether you're just wanting to broaden into space even more, it will depend on the day. It will also depend on, how you are in yourself, because I'm just offering some general guidelines, but each of us is different psychologically and spiritually. We've all followed different paths. So For some people, the psychological, my emotional woundedness, the most powerful force may be the archetypal force. But for other people, it may be actually everyone who ever loved me or believed in me, is the power. All my old, if I'm going to a job interview, maybe all my old bosses who believed in me will be the most powerful thing for me. So really, these are sort of three flavors that are, worth bringing to the practice. That's great. Thanks, Paul. Other questions? Yeah, Enrico. And I think, Anna, you have a question, don't you? But you haven't said so yet.
That's funny because I generally the one that speaks a lot and has a lot of questions. Well, I don't really have a question, but I do believe this meditation worked on some deeper level because I drifted off. And the curious thing is that towards the last part of the meditation, I'm actually in my 8th month of pregnancy.
Oh, congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. My little one started moving a lot and kicking a lot
Right.
in the second part. So yeah, just took the occasion to give him some love also. And
fantastic. So that's so beautiful.
Yeah,
maybe your little one was listening to the meditation.
Yeah, well, mommy was drifting asleep.
Yeah, well, the babies can hear what goes on in the outside. They know that because music that people play to children in the womb, the child responds to when it comes out of the womb, and it responds to voices of people who talk to your belly. So I want to say it's really great to have you here, Anna. And I want to say to your belly, it's really great to have you here as well. And, that's so nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to have you here. Yeah, Enrico, you need to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I want to share this reflection, which I already share in my small breakout group. That it's quite interesting that through your guided meditation, I reached three state of presence, which was totally different, but it wasn't the everyday state of life, where you go through. It was a deeply presence, but with a big differentiation between them, from the spiritual to the psychological to the third, which I can't define it really, but there was three different things, and the feeling and the what I was at that moment, it was something completely different, and to see and to think about things from the other positions was completely different. It's like not from this world, yeah. But there were three different worlds, and it was interesting to see the issues. And I say, okay, yeah, it's interesting, but in some part I say,
Enrico.
Yes.
I feel that you had a really important sacred experience, and you're perhaps trying to explain it too much.
Okay.
It's just like let go of the words, because sometimes we go beyond words, and then it's really helpful for other people to sometimes hear the words, because it informs them, it invites them. But also sometimes we can talk something to death, and so you had this powerful experience of something from another world, and I would just let that sit in you and settle in you, and it's very, very beautiful, what you were describing. Yeah, so we just need to, that's the old saying, we're not interested in the finger pointing at the moon, we're interested in the moon. We're not interested in the reflection of the moon in water, we're interested in the moon. And so, really beautiful. Some, particularly in psychological schools, there's an awful lot of need to talk about it all. But with with my Buddhist master, for example, he was hardcore. He didn't let us talk about our meditation experiences at all, except with him privately. We didn't talk about it at all. My movement of being teachers like us to describe, because it invites other people. But I'm always, often I don't have words to describe it. And I think my Buddhist master, in some ways, is, it's a good approach, which is that each of us have our own spiritual path. It may be really different to somebody else's path. What happens on my path may be not what happens on your path. So, and particularly those moments of the sacred. It's just like, let that moment of the sacred filter through all the different parts of your body, Gyanrika. Just feel that in your heart. It's really beautiful. Well, thank you. What else? Is that Lyndon waving her hand? I can't always tell because Lyndon's waving her hand, but Amanda's scratching her face. We have to sort of like guess. Guess. I think Lyndon wants to speak, and Amanda wanted to scratch her face. So great. Go on, Lyndon.
Well, it was just to sort of share something and say thank you, because in the sort of bringing of these different approaches together, I actually first found myself thinking about sort of archetypes I hadn't really thought of before, and I realized that I hadn't really made an effort to find them, what was coming. But the other thing is that you was sort of encouraging us to think about how they were with us. And now you said, okay, put them in a circle and maybe have more than one circle. And I realized that I have used past mentors and people that I love quite a lot. But for some reason, I've often been lining them up behind me.
Yeah.
The idea that I'm sort of having to sort of punch through something, get something done, you have this purpose or whatever. And I suddenly thought, hey, this time they're here. I'm just sitting with them. And I kind of, well, this is a bit new.
Yeah.
And so, maybe it doesn't have to be a circle or whatever, like some diagrams that you also see in, consciousness training. But it's just that relational form that as it comes to you, to be with you, to be open to it and think about it being in all sorts of shapes or forms around you. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, one of the things I do is if I can't sleep at night, I put my head in the lap of the archetypal form, fall asleep with my head on her lap, Yeah. So, we just do all, this is your own nervous system. Do what? Yeah. And so there's two parts. There's, the more active conscious creation of, but then there's just what's emerging. And it's great to do a bit of both. Suddenly if you're trying to make something happen and it doesn't quite happen, just say, oh, I'll let go of that and notice what emerges. Or just paying attention to what emerges. Bit of both is quite good. Not forcing it too much, but also exploring. Great, thank you, Lyndon. Who else? What else?
I just to say that I was distracted halfway through. I had to take a call, and I knew they would. Well, I was hoping they wouldn't phone, and it was one I couldn't not take.
Yeah.
And so that
probably track and trace, wasn't it, Judith?
I was so cross. I thought this is so opposite to meditation, because I was really looking forward to this one because I wanted to do the three together. Yeah. I ended up getting really cross, and then I came back and found it really hard to get back in, and my thoughts were going, and I said to the group, I said recently that I do try to meditate every day, and I do try to do it when I get up in the morning, but I have noticed quite a lot recently that I got an awful lot of thoughts, and I try not to engage in them with them, but there's a little bit of force going on. Anyway, I shall listen to your tape again at the, when it arrives. And
yeah, and do that, and also just welcome what's happened. One thing to do is just be really curious and compassionate about disturbance, because we just learn so much about ourselves. What is it that happens? The call happens, and then I'm upset about it, and you're just noticing all of that, just noticing what happens,
Mm.
and just being really compassionate with ourselves about, you know,
Is there anything you can suggest for when you're trying to meditate and so many thoughts going through? I'm sure there isn't. You just
Well,
have to.
first is to be compassionate about the nature
Yeah.
of human consciousness, which is we have a lot of thinking, you know, so
Yeah.
that's, and there's probably, you know, if you've got a big project going on, or there's something, you know, you're planning 100 people for Christmas or whatever it is that you're doing,
Yeah.
or planning to be alone at Christmas because you're all locked up or whatever it happens to be. So just being really aware, what is going on for me today, and just being welcoming what's going on. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that if you say, actually, I am really busy, I'm running a project and there's lots of stuff to do, but I do want to take 10 minutes to meditate, then one of the things you can do is you can, you know, well, there's sort of two approaches. One approach is, you know, pay attention to a lot of other things other than thought. So for example, yoga or Tai Chi or movement is good for that, really to take your attention somewhere else. And actually, hand-eye coordination activities like tennis, you know, you can't play tennis and think about other things at the same time. So anything like that would work. But if you're wanting to do sitting meditation, really just trying to catch where is the thought coming from, and watch it come up, and then see it, and then let it go, and then watch the next one come up and see if you can catch it where it comes from, watch it and let it go, and just really trying to observe it. And maybe setting a time limit for 10 minutes. I will not follow the thought. I will watch the thought come, and then I will let it go. You know, and some days you just say, actually, there's something that needs to be done. I'm really busy about it. I'm really anxious about it. That's the first thing I'm going to do, is get X and Y sorted. But, you know, there's another thing that they'll say is that even an uncomfortable meditation practice is progress. So
Better than none. Yeah.
Better than, yeah, because you could just sit with it. Oh, isn't it interesting being so uncomfortable with these thoughts or these feelings? Just to be curious and interested and compassionate about ourselves. I mean, you know, the sort of enlightened state is when you can just welcome everything that's in you. Whatever arises, you welcome. That's the sort of enlightened state. And you know, you don't turn any of it away. One time I was with my Buddhist master, and I think I was being a bit provocative, but there was a cigarette lighter in the shape of a pistol. So I held it to my head, you know, pulled the trigger. And guess what he did? He picked it up, he held it to his head, and he pulled the trigger. It's just like, just a thought, you know. So, you know, that was, you know, so it's sort of like whatever, you know, you have, you know, some, you know, people get very guilty about the fantasies they have, you know, whether it's sex or murder, you know, murdering someone who really annoys them, you know, whatever it is. But if it's just happening in your head, it's just a little thing that's happening in your head. There's actually a case of, there is something called this CBT, mindfulness CBT. And one of the, just the example, case history I remember was somebody who had watched a really, you know, some horror movie, but afterwards it triggered something in him, and he kept having horror, you know, horrific images in his mind all the time. And night and day, he got very guilty and shameful about it. And he tried to suppress them, and he tried to, you know, argue with them, do the normal CBT type of thing. And, you know, and in the end, he went to the mindfulness CBT practitioner and said, just watch them. You know, they're just stuff in your head. Just watch them. And yeah, sure, let them be here. There's nothing wrong with it. So I think sometimes, you know, we have to learn to be really accepting of what's going on in ourselves. You know, I'm the, you know, being the king of the universe, you know, it's sort of like, if I was one of my ones, which is, you know, I'm not going to talk about one of my dark ones, but, you know, being what would I do if I was prime minister? And I have elaborate fantasies about what I would do if I was prime minister. It's like, I'll be compassionate with myself about that, you know, waste my life imagining I'm prime minister. So, yeah, so just being really kind and being curious about your own patterns, starting to watch your own patterns come up. Oh, this is my old pattern. This is what I do. I get upset and then I do this, or something happens and then I've got a little strategy. I go off and watch YouTube. Ah, that's what I do. Thank you, Judith. Anything else bubbling away? I mean, for me, this is the promise that's possible for us, which is that we can just be really close to whatever arises. And if when being able to live close to whatever you're experiencing without trying to change it or stop yourself, I think is sort of, is a sort of, that's being at peace with yourself and the world, isn't it? And so just learning to welcome whatever comes. And sometimes if you just want to stay in bed, but you've got work to do, try giving yourself 10 minutes with a duvet, some time with the duvet over your head. Just say, actually, I will get up. Half an hour later, I'll pull the duvet over my head. I'll set my alarm and I'll really let myself hunker down. Oh, I'm being self-indulgent. I'll give myself another half an hour of being self-indulgent. And I'll really do self-indulgence properly. And then I'll do whatever it is. It's like, how can you include it? How can you understand it? Everything in you has a positive intention. It has a purpose. It's doing something for a reason. There's no such thing as lack of discipline or laziness. Laziness is just that you're tired or you want to do something else. I'm very lazy about my tax returns. I don't want to do tax returns, but I'm smart enough. I pay someone else to do them for me. So it's like, it's like really learning to accept everything that happens in you, and welcoming it. And then in meditation, you just watch it come, it comes, stays a while, and it goes. Good things come up, they stay a while, and they disappear. That's the good news. The bad news is the bad things will come up, they'll stay. The good news is that the bad things will come up, stay a while, but they'll disappear. And the bad news is the good things will disappear too. Everything will disappear. So, but then consciousness remains. So then if you get really curious about consciousness, presence, awareness, that's, there's things rising and falling all the time. And once you become more interested in awareness, then there's a sort of bliss in awareness itself. It's like, wow. It's like, wow, I'm alive. That's what awareness is saying. Wow, 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 wow. I'm alive, I'm alive. I'm at the dentist, I'm alive. Something terrible has happened, I'm alive. Someone's died, I love them, I hurt, I'm in grief, I'm alive. I'm alive. For a short while longer. So notice it while it's here. So it's like all that running around in the world is okay, but let's pay attention to the consciousness itself that runs around in the world, rather than just being obsessed with all the things that we have to do. It's all, how much of what you do in your life is anybody going to remember in 100 years? It's sort of like, it's a game, so it's like, keep the parts of the game that you enjoy and try and give up the parts of the game that you don't enjoy, basically. So, yeah. So next week, we're going to do it. We're going to, bring questions next week, but we're going to do a short, I haven't quite worked out the exact detail of how we'll do this, but I want to have you doing really short meditation practices so that you can do a 5-minute or a 10-minute meditation practice. So, have a think about that. Maybe experiment with that between now and then. Yeah. For those of you, next year, I've got the next course, free open course that I'm doing next year is You Can Heal Your Life. I think that's the title of it. And I'm going to do demonstrations of healing work with people in the group. So if any of you want to have my warm, tender heart support you through something during this time, drop me an email or a text. I'll give you some coaching, in the group. So that will be a really nice series. We're going to look at how we do healing, and I'll do some demonstrations of healing. That's one thing. And then, of course, from the 25th of January, the Life Talent 2022 starts, and altogether Life Talent Level 1 is 9 weeks, Life Talent Level 2 is 31 weeks, And that is a whole year of 3-hour classes with a big break in the summer for the summer holidays about, you know, how this year the real focus is going to be on living in a generative state in which I'm in the flow for all the good stuff, and I'm able to hold myself kindly and lovingly and caringly when it's difficult, and also bounce back from the difficulty more quickly. That's going to be the focus of Life Talent this year. So anyway, we're almost at the end of the session. We've got a bit of time now, so let's hear from each of you. What is something that you're taking away from today that you want to keep in your life? Let's hear from everybody. Can say a sentence or two. It can be more than a word. So what I'll do is I'll pass it to Anna, and then you can pass it to someone else.
Okay. So what I'm taking away is a feeling of calmness and a feeling of resourcefulness, because I know that there are resources and there are people that I can turn to for support whenever this is needed. And again, thank you, Julian, for holding the space and for being present and constant in my life. We've been working together already for a few years, and it's always good to know and reassuring that there's always a space for me in this setting. So I'll pass it to Amanda.
Thank you, Emma. What I'm taking away is, after hearing other people share some of your experiences, I'm taking away feeling less guilty about falling asleep in guided meditations. And missing quite big chunks because I'm asleep. Yeah, which is interesting. I'm going to pass the baton to Maggie.
Thank you. I think I'm taking away the time and the space and the privilege it is just to be able to talk and be listened to. And what a great gift that is for the world. And I'm going to pass it to Mark.
Thank you, Maggie. For me, it's what I'm taking away is a wonderful sense of community. It's this shared space and the access to resources that this provides for me and for all of us. So thank you all. Dara.
Thank you, Mark. I'm taking away the experience, the curiosity and interest and compassion aspect of it. And whilst I've had varied experiences over these past few weeks, I'm really intrigued and curious about the experiences, listening to other people's experiences, and looking forward to new experiences for myself. And again, I share with others. It's lovely to be part of the community, and it was really lovely to have that time always after the meditation to reflect and express the experience that I just had, which I thought was very, very special. Thank you. And I'll hand over to Lyndon.
I have a new awareness of awareness, a much deeper feeling of what I can connect with and connections with you. And with this session, a lot more sort of just connection with warmth and love, and yeah, just possibilities to be. So thank you. And I will turn over to Giancarlo.
Thank you, Gianrico.
Gianrico, sorry, it's my fault. I want to say Giancarlo.
Yeah, it's an important fundament of my generative journey, which I started 1 year ago. This group is it's a fundamental big part of it, and I'm very grateful for this, where I can develop my generative state to be and to become. Thank you.
Who are you going to pass it to again, Rico?
I pass to Achim.
I'm taking away a sense of freedom for a space to be in. And I'm passing on to Barbara.
I'm taking that I actually can make some interesting vowels to connect more, and vowels to connect in my inner world, and I can be more creative with how I'm going to be connecting. And I'm enjoying all of you immensely. And so I'm very also taking away gratitude for, well, not taking it away, I'm opening to this great gratitude for all of you. So thanking you all and saying happy holiday. And I am going with Paul.
Thank you. I think I'm taking away a sense that an acceptance of how I feel as not the entirety of who I am, or being overwhelmed by the negativity which necessarily is formed as part of our experience sometimes of disappointment, and to nurture that deeper sense of being which goes beyond the negative thoughts of hopelessness and near despair and self-pity. That's I think what I've got from today at this particular time, and I hope I retain that. Thank you.
Who will you pass to, Paul? You have to unmute.
Caroline.
I'm taking away a kind of quiet excitement, and yeah, just a very gentle but very kind of pure feeling of connection with everyone in the group, and a sort of special sense of the possibility of us all. Thank you.
Who will you pass to, Caroline? I think it's
Sorry.
Marina and Lydia.
Lydia. I'll pass to Lydia.
Who else?
Yes, thank you. What I want to take away is that feeling grateful being in this community, and also the connection. Yes, also the openness of everyone here. Yes, thank you. I pass it to Maggie. Are you all ready? So,
I think Marina. Is there anyone else who hasn't gone? And Katie. Marina and Katie.
Okay,
Judith, have you
Katie.
gone? And Judith. Marina, Katie, and Judith.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So I'm the reason I come here is it helps me to stay really grounded and calm. I've had quite a lot on at work, and in our group we were talking about Christmas, and I think that song, It's Going to Be Lonely This Christmas, I don't think I'll be going down to my family's. So with the meditation, what I'm really enjoying is that what I got from today, a big one, is to spot the thought, and then not necessarily go down that path, just stick with consciousness. And the other thing I want to mention to the group, it's really interesting to me because I do a lot of coaching and with people and stuff, but you get a different level of listening here, or connection. It's picking up on what Maggie said earlier. It really is a different vibe, and there's something lovely about that. So thank you, everyone. Judith, is it Judith?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to welcome the way I feel, welcome the many thoughts that go whizzing through my head, and welcome disturbances during meditation. And I'm going to pass to, who is it? The other person?
Katie.
Katie, that's right, Katie.
You're on mute, Katie.
Oh, I'm not now. I'm going to welcome falling asleep and feeling tired. I'm just going to enjoy that and not feel guilty. I'm going to take away the comfort and peace of mind, really, that is just there's just a lovely quality of all of that, and reassurance, I suppose, because everybody's human and we all have failings and have difficulty with self-acceptance, so that's good. Yeah, and also I'm really loving old people with bookshelves in their background. I've got a house full of books, but I haven't got enough shelves, so that's inspiring me to get more bookshelves.
Great. So great to see you all here, and look forward to seeing
Julian, Maria didn't share.
Maria.
Yeah, Maria.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Marija.
Yes.
Oh, Maria.
I will take with myself a good feeling. I had a good connection with myself, with my soul, spirit, consciousness, and I could create a light of love. And I sent this outside to the other world for the peace in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And some of you I'll see next week, so for the final in the series. So I hope to see you then. Lots of love to you all. Have a beautiful
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.